Long ago, in busy ports where ships from different lands met for trade, people faced a simple but urgent problem. They could not understand one another. A sailor from England might be shouting instructions. A merchant from West Africa might be bargaining over cloth. A local fisherman might be offering fresh catch from that morning. Each person had their own language, their own sounds, their own way of speaking. Yet trade had to continue. Goods had to be bought and sold. Work had to be done. So instead of giving up, people did something remarkable. They created new ways to speak, not by writing books, not by holding meetings, but by slowly blending words together in markets, on docks, and in fields. These simple, practical mixtures of languages are called pidgins. They were not planned. They were not taught in schools, and yet they changed the way millions of people communicate. Today, we are exploring how these humble contact languages were born, how they grew, and why they still matter to communities around the world, right here, on History of Simple Things. A pidgin is a simplified language that develops when two or more groups of people need to communicate, but do not share a common language. It usually borrows most of its words from one main language, often the language of traders or colonizers, but it shapes those words into simpler grammar and easier sentence patterns. Think of it like building a small bridge. The bridge does not need to be beautiful or complex. It just needs to help people cross from one side to the other. Pidgins often have smaller vocabularies than full languages. They avoid complicated verb endings or grammar rules. Instead of saying, "I am going to the market tomorrow," a pidgin might say something closer to, "Tomorrow I go market." The meaning is clear. The message gets across. At first, pidgins are usually nobody's first language. They are tools, practical solutions, ways for adults from different backgrounds to understand one another well enough to work, trade, and survive. The word pidgin itself is believed to have come from a Chinese pronunciation of the English word business. In the 1700s and 1800s, European traders were active in ports along the southern coast of China. To manage trade, Chinese merchants and English traders developed a simplified form of English known as Chinese Pidgin English. It was not perfect English. It was not traditional Chinese. It was something new. For example, instead of complex English grammar, speakers might use short, direct phrases like, "You pay now," or "He no come today." Simple, clear, effective. But China was not the only place this happened. During the age of exploration and colonial expansion, European powers such as Portugal, Spain, France, and Britain traveled to Africa, the Americas, and the Pacific Islands. Wherever trade posts, plantations, or ports were established, people from different linguistic backgrounds were forced into close contact. Enslaved Africans, European colonizers, and indigenous peoples often did not share a common tongue. Yet they had to communicate daily, so pidgins developed again and again in different corners of the world. One well-known example is Tok Pisin in Papua New Guinea. It began as a pidgin based largely on English during the 1800s, when laborers from different islands worked on plantations under European supervision. Workers spoke many different native languages. English was used by overseers. Out of this mixture, Tok Pisin slowly formed. Words like picanini, meaning child, came from the English word pickaninny, itself influenced by Portuguese. House meant house. Wara meant water. Over time, something important happened. Children began growing up hearing Tok Pisin at home. It was no longer just a trade language. It became a full language with its own grammar and expressive power. When a pidgin becomes a native language for a community, it is called a creole. Today, Tok Pisin is one of the official languages of Papua New Guinea, spoken by millions. What began as a simple tool became a strong part of national identity. Another example can be found in West Africa. Nigerian Pidgin English developed during centuries of trade between British merchants and local communities. Over time, it spread beyond trade. It became a shared language among people who spoke many different African languages. In modern Nigeria, you can hear Nigerian Pidgin on the radio, in music, and in daily conversation. Phrases like "how you day," meaning "how are you," are warm, familiar greetings. The language carries humor, emotion, and culture. What started as a practical bridge became something personal and expressive. It is important to understand that pidgins were often born in difficult conditions. Many arose in times of slavery, forced labor, and colonial control. People who had lost their homes and were separated from their families had to find ways to connect with strangers. In those painful settings, pidgins were tools of survival. They allowed workers to share warnings. They allowed traders to negotiate. They allowed families to form new bonds across language barriers. There is something deeply human about that. Even in hardship, people find ways to speak, to understand, and to belong. Some people once looked down on pidgins. They were called broken versions of real languages. They were seen as incomplete or incorrect. But modern linguists have shown that pidgins follow rules. They develop patterns. They are not random mistakes. They are creative solutions. In fact, studying pidgins helps scholars understand how language itself works. They show us how grammar can grow from simple beginnings. They reveal how humans naturally organize words into systems, even without formal instruction. So why does this matter today? First, many pidgins and creoles are still spoken by millions of people. They are not historical curiosities. They are living languages. They carry stories, jokes, songs, and traditions. Second, pidgins remind us that language is not fixed. It is flexible. It adapts to human need. When communities meet, languages do not simply compete. Sometimes they cooperate and blend. And finally, pidgins show us that communication does not require perfection. It requires willingness, a shared goal, a need to understand and be understood. In a world that often feels divided by culture and speech, the history of pidgins offers a quiet lesson. When people must connect, they find a way. From crowded docks in 18th century China to plantation fields in the Pacific, from West African markets to modern city streets, pidgins have shaped lives in subtle but powerful ways. They began as simple bridges between strangers. In many places, they became the language of home, community, and identity. They carry the marks of history, including both hardship and resilience. The next time you hear a simplified mix of languages, remember that behind it lies centuries of human effort to reach across difference. Sometimes the most ordinary tools tell the most extraordinary stories. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.